Yes, guys, welcome to our lovely discussion because the iPhone 7 is finally here.
You know, it's the best iPhone Apple has ever made.
Let's just
It
stop that
really
rubbish.
is.
No, 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 no,
Definitely.
no, 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 no. Anyway, guys, welcome. Uh, Thanks for joining us. I have, of course, is Mr. Juan Bagnell from Pocket Now. How's it going, man?
It's going really well. I think I'm going to be playing good cop, and I think you're going to be playing bad cop, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this one.
Yes, I'm going to be a very, very bad cop with this device right here. So the iPhone 7 was announced. Today by Apple, and the iPhone 7, iPhone 7 Plus, and they mentioned a couple of changes here to the device. Some of them, of course, which we would expect. Some of them, I was a little bit down on Twitter. If you saw me on Twitter, I kind of railed a lot on Apple with a lot of GIFs or GIFs or however you want to pronounce it. But first off, before we start off and before I start pooping on this device in any form or fashion, your thoughts on the iPhone 7 and what you've seen so far?
So, I mean, obviously, we won't even be able to get our hands on these for another couple of weeks. But from what Apple is talking about, the direction that they're heading, this is one of the advantages, I think, for the way that Apple does TikTok hardware, and that they slow play a lot of hardware innovation. For the 6S, obviously the 6S was not a great year for Apple in terms of sales. Well, now Apple can catch up to the industry at large with a number of features, a number of tech pieces that I think are going to be really interesting, kind of satisfy the geek side of the equation. And they've definitely got their sights set on Asian markets, trying to appeal to glossy finished smartphone fans. So I'm ultimately, I think, again, like I was with the iPhone SE, I think this is a positive move for Apple. I think this is going to make a lot of people happy when we see, when we're going to talk about more of this stuff in detail, obviously. But just as a general impression, I'm thinking that this is actually a pretty forward-thinking iPhone. We're never going to get that Apple again, which completely revolutionizes the smartphone market, but we can get an Apple that's going to be more competitive, and ultimately, I think that's going to be better for consumers.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I saw. I vamped a little bit longer than I probably would have, but you're back.
I got kicked out, and
Well,
bloody
that's
hell.
what you get for talking about Apple on a Hangout.
Could you vamp a
Google
little bit
was
more
like,
because I do have
shut it
to.
down.
Yeah, I do have to jump back out and jump back in again. Yeah, so lay some more
No
thoughts on the iPhone
worries. I'll,
7.
I'll I'll briefly start talking about some of the tech stuff that I think was interesting, and then when you jump back in, we can cover this in more detail.
Okay.
Okay, so when we're talking about Apple, obviously very conservative hardware company as it pertains to the iPhone. The iPhone is their bread and butter, so they tend to not do anything radical. They don't want to upset the apple cart there. So when we look at the iPhone 7, they've got this new manufacturing process, which makes for a more seamless shell on the back. They're getting rid of those HTC style antenna bands. I think from a fashion standpoint, Apple actually has found some ways of communicating newness. That's always the biggest issue with Apple. It's not that they're ever going to, completely change up their hardware design, but they need to find new ways of being fashion forward. So new for this season will be a piano glossy jet black iPhone, which I think is going to look really cool. And again, glossy, that really appeals in a lot of Asian markets, Asian demographics. What I'm really happy to see, the lifestyle features, improved water resistance. We now have an IP67 rated iPhone, stereo speakers on an iPhone. I'll be curious to see the differences in the camera hardware between the iPhone 7 and the 7 Plus. But at least for people using the smaller iPhone, people with tiny little hobbit hands like mine, you won't be punished for that, and with the exclusion of optical image stabilization. But if you move up to the iPhone 7 Plus, now we have differing focal lengths on those two camera sensors. One's a normal field of view, and the other one's a zoom field of view, sort of similar to LG's approach, but in the opposite direction, where LG is looking for that wide angle view for their secondary camera system. Apple is now looking for more reach. So again, very different philosophies, but a similar execution, having two sensors on the back of that phone. And then, of course, this is also a big step for Apple in including a quad-core processor and moving to a big little processor design, something we've seen a lot in Qualcomm processors and in sort of Android land, this idea of big processors for heavy lifting, smaller processors for less power intensive apps. But considering that, I don't think we're going to see a significant change to battery capacity, nor will we see improvements to fast charging times. At least an additional step in processor efficiency for Apple, I think, would go a long way for some of the criticisms we've seen on the smaller iPhone's battery life. So ultimately, I'm like, that's why I'm feeling positive. A lot of these steps address some of the tech concerns that we've had of Apple in the past. It catches them up significantly. And I think this is going to be a more competitive iPhone offering than the 6S was last year.
Okay, so I am finally back. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You're back on.
I have no control over the Hangouts. I apologize. I've lost all features. I was trying to share images. So if you can share an image of the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, please do. If you can.
I can't. I'm on my laptop. So just full disclosure, I have a sick child at home. She can't go to daycare, and so she's actually using the desktop in my office right now to stream Mother Goose Club. So that's where all of my photos are from the event. So
that is fine. So I'll talk a little bit about the iPhone 7 and the 7 Plus. So I'll do my positives first and be quick. I'm glad that they've moved the camera to that 12 megapixel. I'm not sure what that sensor is, but I think it's the same sensor everybody's is going with that, that everyone has jumped in this year with that 12 megapixel, whether it's from what size the sensor is, but I'm glad it's been bumped. It looks like they've done more work to the camera, so I'm always happy about that.
Yeah, the module is big enough. I think that we finally moved away from a 3/8 sensor, which would be a very big step in the right direction.
Yeah, so I'm definitely glad with that aspect there. I'm also intrigued about the dual cameras, but I'm not the biggest fan. I do like what Huawei has done with the dual camera better than what LG's wide is cool, but really not useful. And that zoom, I know I talked with Super Scientific Danny Wingate about it on Twitter, and I'm like, look, I'm sorry, it's not physical zoom, it's 2x, big deal. Whatever. I mean,
the 2x is the physical zoom.
So it
gives you a little bit of extra reach, but again, a 2x isn't going to be a revolutionary adjustment for photography zoom. So again, I'll be curious to play with it because it also looks like they'll be using that to piggyback on like Huawei and HTC's ideas for doing a better software processing depth of field blur.
Exactly. Yeah. On that aspect. Now, on the other aspects of the iPhone, I'm glad it's water resistant now. Thank God that, they've copied something from Samsung and Sony, actually, you should be precise.
Yeah, we definitely credit for Sony.
So Sony. Also, the fact that the iPhone itself it's got better processor management. We know that the battery has not increased because if it had a bigger battery, I think they would have told us that their battery life now lasts over 40 hours or whatever the case may be. I think what some of my disappointments from the iPhone 7 is that I didn't see, as usual,